CR101radio.com, podcasts, and more.
5. Curzonization. Position paper number 204, September 1996. More than 60 years ago, as a young man, I was very much interested in the British leader George Curzon, a Member of Parliament, Viceroy of India, Lord Privy Seal, and later Foreign Secretary, First Baron and First Marquis Curzon of Kedleston. Curzon, 1859 to 1925, worshipped power, authority, and ritual. As a result, he thought highly of Turkey and of autocracies which stressed symbols. He saw it a duty to impress natives and common peoples with the trappings of power. The Delhi Durbar, monuments to the unknown soldier, and other symbolic events and cenotaphs showed Curzon's hand. Much of the ceremony common now to state functions shows the influence of Curzon. It has been called Curzonization. David Cannadine, in Aspects of Aristocracy, 1994, observed, "For him, great ceremonials were pages of history, chapters in the ritual of the state." Page 83. Cannadine devotes a very long chapter to Winston Churchill, an example of this. Of Churchill, Cannadine observes, "He showed no respect for religious belief or spiritual values, and his conversation was often Rabelaisian." Page 149. But Churchill could not turn every speech and act into a momentous ritual and symbol. His lust for greatness he made into an imperial ritual and act. He saw Britain's rise to power as the work of a small segment of Britain, an aristocracy that had propelled a people into greatness. Churchill had no idea what the common people were like and imagined them to be small cottagers. He had been attracted to Sir Oswald Mosley, Mussolini, and fascism. But Churchill was not alone in this. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, with less ability, also saw life as a stage whereupon aristocrats managed things in the name of the people. In World War II, Britain and the United States were led by men indifferent to Christianity, while Germany, the Soviet Union, and Italy were led by men, Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini, opposed to it. There was a logic to all this. Lord Curzon was a man who substituted forms and symbols for substance and reality. St. Paul early faced this issue. With him, and with the New Testament, definition now became a matter of inner reality, not external form. Paul insisted in Romans chapter 2, verses 28 to 29, that the true Jew is one who is a Jew inwardly, from the heart, not merely by circumcision. It is hard at this distance to recognize the religious revolution this created, because the Greco-Roman world was content with external definitions. Muhammad expressed the counter-revolution to Paul and Christianity by declaring that he is a true Muslim who is one outwardly. Curzon and the 20th century are in line with Muhammad, and the political leaders now admired represent this externalism and hypocrisy. About 30 years ago, I was told of a group of intellectual and cultural leaders that it was radically tolerant of any kind of immoral behavior performed discreetly, but radically intolerant of any moral standards on any grounds. This describes rather well the culture of our day. Many of the televised ceremonies of our day, award celebrations, political non-events made momentous, academic ceremonies, ecclesiastical professionals, and more, are best described as the results of Curzonization. Critics saw in Lord Curzon an insufferable sense of superiority, not for him the sordid policy of self-effacement. Page 78. Much of the supposedly ancient imperial pomp of Britain has its origin in the Curzon era. Oxford too felt the effect of Curzonization when he became Chancellor. But this is not all. Curzonization now appears even in middle-class weddings, performed with much pomp and more expense, followed by receptions at greater costs and pretentiousness. Simplicity and economy are somehow in bad taste. Curzon's premise was, impress the peasants and natives. But what about God? More than once, God, through the prophets, expressed contempt for the solemn assemblies of a hypocritical people. He saw these as a form of rebellion. He declared that, in all these pretentious forms, the faithful city had become a harlot. Lord Curzon restored at great expense some magnificent mansions. Kettleston, Derbyshire, Bodiam Castle, Sussex, Montague House, Somerset, and Tattersall Castle, Lincolnshire. 2 of these were bequeathed to the National Trust. He was an earnest and dedicated servant of the monarchy and empire. But he was also a prime example of the new temper of men and nations. After Darwin, men turned from a moral and a religious imperative to a man-centered one. Their concern ceased to be pleasing God, but became instead pleasing men. In the colonial era, the imperative to children was pleasing God and their parents as duty to him. By the late 1950s, college and university students were telling me that the governing force on campus was peer pressure, pleasing one's classmates and meeting with their approval. Since then, the power of peer pressure has grown. Nothing is more calculated to make a people easily controlled than peer pressure, a modern term for an old fact. The fear of man. The fear of man is a condition of tyranny, and only the fear of God can counteract it and prevail.